recording. Okay, guys, I'd like to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me today for our career opportunities panel. First, I'd like to go ahead and discuss or introduce our panelists, and then I'll discuss with you the format of today's seminar. First, I'll start with Wendy Erickson from Women in Drones. Wendy Erickson is an Emmy award-winning journalist. Let me get that right. FAA certified drone pilot and host of the Women in Drones podcast. Wendy also handles digital media and STEM initiatives for womenindrones.com. Her passion for encouraging girls to explore STEM careers comes from raising 3 daughters. Wendy has co-authored books for children as part of the Drone Girls series and often speaks on the topic of drones and opportunities for women in the industry. Next, I'll give you the bio of Divya Budiyal. Am I saying your name right? Budiyal from Zipline. Divya graduated from the University of British Columbia with a degree in electrical engineering and cultivated her interest in robotics when she interned at an autonomous helicopter startup in the Bay Area. She then worked on creating test platforms for multiple drones at Boeing and now works at Zipline. Zipline uses drones to deliver critical medical supplies around the world, including Ghana and Rwanda, and Divya works on algorithms that make the drones react to each other and their environment in a smart way. And next, but last but not least, I'll give you Jordan Kruger from the University of North Dakota. Jordan Kruger is a graduate from the University of North Dakota with a Bachelor's of Science in Unmanned Aircraft Systems. He draws experience from several fronts for his program management position at the University of North Dakota Research Institute for Autonomous Systems. Jordan has been an avid flyer of unmanned aircraft for over 14 years and manned aircraft for 10 years. He served as the UND UAS RC Club president throughout his undergraduate studies and is now the club advisor. Jordan has interned with large UAS industry from a program management standpoint and worked for several other U.S. companies, which has now given him a large amount of technical expertise and a solid management background. Now, folks, on today's, the format for today's panel will be all in question format. So in order for you to get as much information as possible from our panelists in a short amount of time, I'm going to ask each one of the panelists a targeted question that they'll get an answer. And then towards the end, we'll allow the audience to ask questions. And you can feel free to do that personally via the mic. So towards the end, when we ask for you to ask questions, raise your hand and you can ask your questions personal. Okay. So first, also, I want to give each panelist maybe 5 minutes each to explain how they got into the drone industry and how they matriculate to the drone industry from where they were previously in their careers or educational platforms. And I want to start once again with Ms. Erickson. How did you get involved with drones? You're muted. You're muted.
See, there we go. My first, I don't have to do a lot of these, so my first mistake, but I'll get better, I promise. I am a journalist, a TV journalist by trade, as you kindly mentioned, and I started seeing drone imagery on the network news, specifically disasters, earthquake coverage, and realized what a game changer drones were going to be for the journalism industry as I knew it. And I was kind of hooked once I started researching what drones are doing. This was in about 2016. And I met Sharon Rossmark at a conference in Chicago, and a drone industry conference. And there were very few women. And she was the one who said, we need to have a space for women to connect, to work in this industry. And so the rest is history.
Thank you for that, Ms. Erickson. Appreciate it. Next, I'll go to Divya. How'd you get involved with Zipline and what you're doing in the drone world?
Thanks for the great intro, Ernest. Yeah, so I'm Divya. I kind of started off in my childhood really loving planes and like loving that space. And then when I got to university, I knew that I wanted to work in global development. So working on programs and technology to alleviate poverty and help developing communities. But I really didn't know how to get there. So I was like, okay, you know what? I like math and science. Let me try engineering out. So I studied electrical engineering and kind of focused more on low level embedded type software for like chips and things like that. And then I kind of just started to learn more software on my own through online courses and things like that. And like Ernest mentioned, I ended up getting an internship at an autonomous helicopter startup in the Bay, and it kind of exposed me to this whole world of like what how software and engineering could be used for aircraft. So I didn't have to be like a mechanical engineering designing planes to work on in this field. And originally the purpose of that company was to use helicopters for emergency response. So I realized that you could also use flying things for helping people. And kind of through that first exposure, I started to do more research, and I saw a lot of industry and delivery with drones, and that's how I found Zipline, and also like mapping for natural disasters, as previously mentioned. And so I kind of realized that that's the space that I needed to be in, and started targeting my coursework and like my personal learning towards that. So then my second internship, I was working on like a multi-drone platform, test platform for Boeing, and that helped me learn a lot. And I ended up at Zipline, which had been my dream company for a while. They work on delivering medical supplies from distribution centers like vaccines, snake antivenom, and like rabies medication instantly when doctors need them. And they operate in Rwanda and Ghana, and now uh, expanded to North Carolina as well. And yeah, so I think it was a great balance of like being able to create impact and then working on what I like. I ended up figuring out that I'm most interested in autonomy and giving the drones their own brain so they can fly themselves and react to the environment as they need to. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here and answer your questions.
Thank you, Divya. Thank you very much for that. And Mr. Kruger, how'd you get involved with the drone industry?
Well, I'll start with a short version of the story. So, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Some of you may or may not know that is the home of one of the world's largest air shows, and I live right on the airport. So, throughout my entire childhood, I was seeing aircraft everywhere. Right, every year was just the best week of my life, seeing those aircraft fly around right over my house. And as I don't know, 6 or 7 years old, basically when my hands were big enough to hold a remote controller and move the sticks around, I was flying on that aircraft. So I got into that at a very early age as a hobbyist, and stuck with aviation, just in the RC perspective, until I got to high school. When I was 14 and a half, I started taking manned aircraft like flight lessons. I got my pilot's license when I was 17, and then I actually went to the University of North Dakota as a commercial aviation major to first go to the airlines. I wanted to go just straight to the airlines, fly aircraft kind of the rest of my life, but saw that UAS is a huge career. It's up and coming. There's a lot of technology. I knew a lot about it already, so it was very interesting to me, and that's kind of where I'm at now, working for the University Research Institute for Autonomous Systems, and loving it.
Fantastic, Mr. Kruger, for that. I want to give you guys how I got involved with aviation overall, and I think it's important because we're speaking to a bunch of educators. But for me, it was a teacher in 10th grade who saw I was a class clown who, always goofed off in class, but I was getting A's and B's just by being there kind of deal. And it was a teacher who took a personal interest in me, which typically doesn't happen. As an educator, or as educators, you see a lot of educators focus on kids who struggle, but not educators don't typically focus on the kids who are doing well because they think they're gonna. But that guy, he's seen something in me, and he put me to the side after class one day, and he said, "Ernest, what do you want to do for a living? You're smart, but you're always just jacking around and playing and joking around, And being a clown, what do you want to do for a living? And at the time, I had no clue. Nobody ever asked me. So he said, stay after school, go to the library, research careers, and figure out what you want to do. So I went to the library, played Oregon Trail for a little bit. I spent maybe 5 minutes figuring out what I wanted to do. And because I was interested in sci-fi books, I was a huge science fiction reader. I said, I want to be an astronaut. And he said, thinking he was going to be done with me with that, right? And he said, no, well, what do you need to do to become an astronaut? And I don't know. Earn to stay after school. And he was giving me grades for this too, by the way. He said, if you don't, just to skip your final paper, you're going to get an A on it anyway. I'm giving you this assignment instead. So I stayed after school, and I figured to be an astronaut, I can be a pilot, aeronautical engine or engineer or scientist. And I hated math. Well, I didn't hate math. I was relatively good in it, but I didn't want to do it for a living. I hated the written assignments at the end of the labs in science. So both the math ruled out engineering, and the labs at the end of science ruled out scientists. So I said, a pilot. I ended up going to school to become a professional pilot just off of that discussion. That's what led me onto the path of being in aviation. I think just that amount of push with decent students is enough that it take them and get them on the right path to their careers eventually. Just like Jordan, I thought I went to do the professional pilot piece and decided against it. I wasn't as exciting to me. And that's how I ended up in aviation planning, where I'm at now. And being here at the Council of Governments is what's gotten me into the drone industry, because anybody in planning is now seeing the drone industry is the next horizon, and you can't disassociate yourself from this industry. So I just wanted to share my story, and that's the last you're going to get from me, because it's about the panelists. And let's get to the questions. So Divya, what type of jobs does a company like Zipline hire for at the moment?
So the cool thing about what we do is we need all kinds of people. And I think it's all about like finding what kind of impact you want to create, what you're good at, and what you're passionate about working on a day-to-day. So for example, I work on what we call autonomy and behaviors. So I come up with algorithms and write code that helps the drones fly themselves. The current project I'm working on is making the drones avoid each other in the air so they don't collide. So like there's that whole aspect. There's embedded engineering, which is lower level. You're programming chips, you're talking to sensors, you're passing information back and forth in the software and hardware stack of the drone. There's the mechanical and aerospace engineering aspect, where you actually get to design these drones, make them more efficient, make their make their delivery mechanisms better, and like make the systems reliable. We also need electrical engineers to design all the electronics of the system, and also everything that goes into the ground systems. Like we have a big recovery system, we have battery chargers, we have iPads that the controllers use to monitor the aircraft. So there's a bunch of work there. And then there's actually a data science portion as well. So anytime you have any sort of drone operations happening, you always want to analyze how those operations are going. So we have a data science team that looks at how we've been fulfilling medical orders, and how often our drones fail, and like what their performance is like. So there's that whole data science aspect. There's room for machine learning for sure. Like that's the next big thing that's going to enable a lot of autonomy and progress in what drones can do. And then kind of apart from all of the tech stuff, there's a lot more that goes into making this happen, including flight operators. So if you're interested in like getting pilots licenses and working with drones on a day-to-day, I think flight operators are great. We have people in Ghana and Rwanda that launch like 100 of these drones every day and get to monitor their missions. We also have people that work on the pharmacy side that actually deal with the health aspects of like fulfilling orders and figuring out how to make the whole process better. And then you probably know this really well, Ernest. If you have a drone company, you need a legal team, because you have to deal with regulatory bodies. So that's a huge thing. And I think there's actually a lot of creativity involved, because you have to be creative with getting new types of drone technology regulated, because no one's really written the rules out perfectly yet for this field. And then you kind of also have the people team that work on recruitment and hiring. So I think whatever kind of work you do, there's a way to start gearing it towards more of the drone space and the drone world, if that's the industry and impact that you're interested in.
Just a quick follow-up, if you can answer really quickly. What type of coding platform do you currently work on or work with?
Yeah, sure. So we have all custom chips and things like that we use. I personally code mostly in C++, and this is pretty common for robotics in general. I know that Python is something that a lot of people learn, and it's a super useful tool. But often when you actually want to run something on a real robot, Python is not reliable. So a lot of people work in C and C++. And yeah, we have like custom simulation tools. So I can write some code and then create like a simulation scenario where I say, okay, launch 3 drones to go to this delivery site. And then I can look at what happens in simulation and make sure that everything goes as expected before we try these things on real drones.
Another quick question, because C++, at what age can kids start getting involved in trying to in coding in C++?
I think you can get started at any age. I personally hadn't coded at all before I entered university, but I ended up learning C++ entirely on my own during university because it wasn't offered through my courses. So I think that if you're interested, you can get started at any age. And my recommendation would be to like try to learn the basics just with YouTube videos and online courses, but then have like a kind of project that you want to work on. So if you're interested in drones, you can look into using something called ROS, the Robot Operating System. It's an open source like software stack that you can use to experiment with robotics. Also, you can get different types of autopilots and things like that online and try to build your own drone, or even make your own simulation. Like I think you should start learning C++ and the basics of coding, but then have a project that you're working towards, because that's when you'll learn the most.
Thank you very much. Great answer.
No problem. Thanks.
Jordan, as the only person on the panel who has a formal education in UAS technology, how has that education served you in your career, and do you think it was required?
So that's a complex question. Just to start out very basic, as a program manager at RISE, a bachelor's degree was required. Didn't necessarily have to be unmanned aircraft systems though. To get more into that though, I came into college with years of hobbyist experience building, flying, breaking, and fixing RC aircraft, right? But my UAS degree added kind of a deep technical knowledge and autonomous fundamentals that I picked up on really quickly, and it expanded my capabilities. So because of this, I was not only able to take classes, but actually teach them as a sophomore, junior, and senior at UND. And it wasn't just knowledge of small unmanned aircraft either. UND has partnerships with large unmanned aircraft manufacturers like Northrop Grumman, General Atomics. And there were, several classes actually that were dedicated to learning about those large UAS and actually flying them in simulators. So I guess how has my education served me as...
Pause the tape, Jordan.
Yeah.
This is a very important point. How old are you now?
24, and I'm married.
And at what age did you start flying RC aircraft?
7 or 8 years old.
So this educators, the earlier you get these kids in drone platforms, when he gets to college, now that individual, him or her, can teach classes at that level, because they'll be way more proficient than a lot of their classmates when they get up there. And that's Jordan benefited from an early exposure to the drone platform, and was immediately able to transfer that and now income for yourself while you're in college. So kids can get started at 8, 9, 10 years old. You don't have to be flying commercially to do drones. You don't have to be a genius to do drones, but you see how that served Jordan in his career. Continue.
Right. Yeah, that's a very valid point, actually. And I saw that teaching classes, 3/4 of the kids would come in not having any experience with RC aircraft, and they'd be in a class where they have to design, build, and fly their own autonomous aircraft. And me taking the class one semester to teaching it the next semester. Just that experience put me well ahead. But yeah, so how has my education served me, going back to it? As just a project manager, I wouldn't actually need to come in knowing much about unmanned aircraft systems. But what my job title does not say is that I'm a performer on a lot of these research projects for UND, on top of being a project manager. So, and also as a UAS subject matter expert, right? So on top of that, I'm able to lead the Collegiate Drone Racing Association and be a faculty advisor for the RC Club. So I guess to put it in short, my education has definitely taken me to some pretty amazing places, and I continue to use it to learn more and gain experience, and excited to see where it takes me.
Thank you, sir. Now, do you recommend other kids do the same type of degree program you took, or do you have any other recommendations?
It's a tough one because a lot of kids going into college nowadays have no clue what they want to do. They think being a pilot would be cool, being an astronaut would be cool, being, whatever is cool, but you won't really know until you kind of get your hands in there and do some stuff. So I guess to start out, do STEM in high school, figure out stuff in high school. And then that should give you at least a little bit better idea of what you want to do. Then work your way into college, pick your degree. I think unmanned aircraft systems as a degree is fantastic. I absolutely benefited from it, and I know hundreds, thousands of others will eventually too. But there's a lot else out there. So keep an open mind and figure out what's best for you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Now for Wendy, you spent 25 years as a TV journalist. How are drones being used as a news gathering tool?
Yes, well, drones are being used in newsrooms all around the country. Kind of a newer thing, but as I mentioned when I had the introduction, that's what got me interested in drones in the first place, and seeing how a earthquake aftermath was covered via using an image of a drone showing all of this devastation. And it used to be back in the day when I started in TV news that you would use the helicopter. The station usually contracted to have a helicopter, whether the station owned one or not, they used one. And if I wanted any pictures from above, I always use the corn maze example, because for many years I was a feature reporter where I just needed a picture of what the annual fall pumpkin patch corn maze looked like. Every year it changed the design, and sometimes the farmers didn't have the money to pay a photographer to go up in an airplane. So I would have to see if I could get the helicopter to take that picture, and the newsroom director would be like, well, no, not for a feature story, because it costs $1,000 to pay the pilot and the fuel to get the helicopter up there. So, that was frustrating. Well, now we have newsrooms have a drone, and they can use the ease and the inexpensive way to get the pictures that they need, and it comes in handy. Now the regulations, and it's been a slow process for the news industry to be able to use them on a regular basis. We are working through all that, as we all know. But journalism, it's a great tool. They're using them to tell stories. I recall talking about a story done on network news about a giant pipeline, and just to be able to have that drone video flying along the pipeline, it just helped the reporter be able to explain and give the viewers a visual idea of what we're talking about, because a pipeline from the ground just looks like a giant. You don't really get the image. You don't really get the picture. I always say a picture speaks 1,000 words. So we're getting these amazing images in using drones to tell stories, and that's what the journalism industry does. So,
do you remember what the difference in cost was to use a drone versus the helicopter?
Well, a good. About $9,000. I mean, in terms of, well, no, so on a regular basis, a drone would be about a $1,200. I think the station I worked for started out with the DJI, the Phantom, so about a $1,200 drone. So you're in one drone purchase, you get how many stories out of that versus one flight of a helicopter. So
Good.
yeah, pretty cost effective there.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Back to Divya. Has Zipline as a company been affected by COVID-19?
Yeah, sure. Great question. I think that Zipline is facing the same challenges as other companies in terms of reworking their policies around working from home or working from the office. I personally have been working remotely the whole time. I joined about 6 months ago, and I've been working remotely ever since. And we kind of limit people that go into the office. But interestingly enough, because of COVID, people started to see the value in modern and efficient health systems, because we've now seen all around the world our health systems are starting to break down, and we don't actually have the resources we need to deal with a pandemic. So it's actually opened up a lot of new opportunities for us. For example, we started flying COVID samples, like test samples and COVID supplies and PPE in Ghana. And prior to the COVID pandemic, we couldn't fly in over densely populated areas. We had dedicated airspace and dedicated routes. And because of the urgency of the pandemic, they basically gave us free reign to fly over Accra, which is like one of the biggest city in Ghana, and fly to hospitals in densely populated areas so that they could receive this service. And the distribution center has been really smart about COVID best practices. So all of the supplies that are packed and delivered that are related to COVID all are kind of handled in a separate area. It's kind of the shed, but there's a separate shed just for COVID related things. And people that are working in that area all wear PPE, and they're taking a lot of precautions. In a similar vein, in North Carolina, we got immediate approval almost to fly our drones and deliver COVID PPE and supplies. In the US, it takes so long to get regulatory approval to do anything like this. So our roadmap didn't have flying in the US in until end of this year, but we ended up flying in May because of the urgency that the COVID pandemic created. And I think overall, people are starting to realize that health systems are something that we need to invest in. And I think people are now seeing the place that companies like Zipline and drones in general have in that space.
Just as a follow-up, are you privy to what Zipline thinks in terms of growth and their business over a 5-year span of time?
Yeah, sure. So the ultimate goal of Zipline is to get medical supplies to everyone that needs them. And to get there, we want to create a system where people can get medicine exactly when they need it, and they don't have to travel to get it. So one of the things we have are new contracts with health companies and Walmart, in Walmart pharmacy in the US, to deliver directly to homes. So you can imagine getting cancer medication or recurring prescriptions straight to your home. And that, I'm hoping, will expand all over the world. The US acts as a good test bed because they can provide a lot of upfront cost that maybe other countries can't afford to pay at the moment. Our original platform that does deliveries to hospitals pays for itself now, but to be able to deliver to homes, there needs to be a lot more development work put into that. So the US is a country that can kind of front that cost, but to expand all over the world, I see our system being able to deliver things like aid medication, birth control supplies directly to communities and villages and homes, so people don't have to travel to get medicine. In some developing countries, people need to arrange for bus rides or motorbike rides multiple kilometers away, or people walk to get basic medical supplies, and this results in low upkeep of things like AIDS medication and birth control, which all really negatively impact society. So how I see drone delivery playing in this space is being able to get people medical supplies when they need them the most, and help with upkeep of recurring prescriptions. And yeah, I think our plan is to just expand all over the world. We're looking at Ethiopia, Israel, like tons of different countries at the moment.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Jordan, what are drones primarily being used for commercially in North Dakota?
Everything. So, well, short of making Hollywood movies, but no, in North Dakota, there's a very wide range of applications, with the main ones being soil and oil, as we like to call it. North Dakota, obviously, a huge spot for oil, huge spot for agriculture. It's one of the lowest population states in the U.S., so there really is not a whole lot out here, right? So for agriculture, I mean, that's probably one of the biggest, yeah, along with pipelines, but really, I mean, North Dakota, we're doing the same things commercially, with unmanned aircraft as, you know, everywhere else in the United States. What sets us apart, though, is the amount of beyond visual line of sight, flight over people, night operations. It's the things that regulations don't necessarily allow easily under Part 107 rules, which is commercial drone regulations, basically. North Dakota has literally been dubbed the Silicon Valley of drones by the New York Times. We are amazing things. The state has invested millions and millions of dollars. So has the university, and we're pushing regulations forward very, very quickly, because we realize the efficiencies that exist within unmanned aircraft, the benefits of integrating them into the national airspace. But at the same time, we have a huge safety background. You know, we have one of the oldest aviation schools in the country, which is arguably the biggest and the best now, that has been working safety for the last 50 years. And safety is the FAA's #1 priority, right? Federal Aviation Administration. So that's, I mean, we kind of do it all for regulations.
Now, having said that, are there job opportunities up there for folk who are interested in your region? Yeah,
absolutely, and they're growing. Absolutely. I would say North Dakota maybe is not as warm as, you know, the Bay Area, but if you're looking for an awesome career and cool technology, it's up here.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Erickson, how do you approach talking about career opportunities when giving outreach presentations for women in drones?
Well, Women in Drones, we used to do a lot of presentations. Hopefully that will start back up again soon. But we are about women in this industry and growing the numbers, and started doing these presentations, introduction to drones, but focusing on ways to get women and girls interested in the industry. So the presentations that we do, I kind of use some experience that I have as a mom of 3 girls, now adults, or my youngest is still in college, but trying to entice the audience and the girls in the audience and women in the audience with things, meet them kind of where they are. I raised 3 girls who were not, even though they liked science and math, would not join the robotics club because it was all boys, and their friends were not going to join robotics club. So they were not going to join robotics club. So when I started putting some presentations together, I kind of used examples that I thought that would meet a variety of the group that I would be talking to. So for instance, one of the videos that I show is a video of the Dolce & Gabbana fashion show from a couple of years ago, where they used drones to fly the new purses, the new handbag collection down the runway. And, you know, not all girls are interested in fashion, but certainly a lot of them are. And if that's what perks them up, then you pique their interest, and then you kind of get the other stuff to them in an indirect way. But I just know, again, from raising girls, and you educators out there know a lot more about teaching than I do, but I just know to get their attention, you got to meet them where they are. Some other parts of the presentations that I've done, Women in Drones, we have a book called The Wonders of Whale Snot. And I show a video in these presentations. A lot of kids and girls in general are interested in helping animals. And so there is something called a snot bot, where someone, a marine biologist, an actual company invented, they attached a petri dish to a drone and they fly it over the whale. And when the whale releases through the blowhole, the snot is what they call it. That's how they collect the snot and take it back to the lab. And that's how they analyze the health of the whale. And they don't have to do the I'm losing my mind on the word, but where they're actually injecting them, or they're the old word would be harpooning them to get a sample of their tissue. So, in Australia, they're using drones to look for sharks and warn people on the beach, or they're actually attaching life preservers to drones and flying them out there to somebody who's drowning as the first step in getting to them. So in agriculture, I did a lot of talks in Iowa where there's a lot of agriculture. So showing videos of how farmers are using drones in agriculture, just trying to get attention and using those examples that are perhaps more visual, and then you get them hooked. Like I said, you get them hooked, and then you give them, teach them about coding, and then they can go off into an area related that maybe they'll be their future career. So that's what I mean about approaching careers. And when you're talking to younger children, as you mentioned, Ernest, the importance of getting them hooked in their maybe elementary age, school age, is so that they could set themselves up for success as they get into the higher levels.
Hey, Ernest, I think you're muted.
I keep muting myself to cut off the feedback, but
Thank
thank
you
you for that response, Wendy. And this question is going to be for all of you guys. I want to start with Divya, and then we're going to get to questions from the audience because we're running short on time. So Divya, what are some drone-related careers that students should be on the lookout for in the future?
Yeah, sure. I think that from the STEM perspective, I think there's going to be a lot of work to be done kind of around the space that I'm in, robotics and autonomy and machine learning. I think if you're interested in coming up with creative solutions to a really complex problem, it's a great career. You can get into this by learning computer science or engineering. There's a lot of you basically get to figure out how to make something fly itself. It's pretty fun. And then I think other careers that are going to be really important are actually public outreach and legal roles around drones. Like you said, Ernest, a big thing is going to be combining, integrating drones to the national airspace. And this is a problem that no one has solved on a national scale yet in the US. So I think that's going to be huge. And then a part of doing that integration is going to be convincing people that drones are good. So if you like talking and marketing and things like that, I think that's going to be a huge opportunity in the future, because there's this, we call it the not in my backyard attitude. So there's going to be a lot of that, and you have to convince people that drones are a good thing and they're going to help them. I think also when it comes to things like engineering, there's always going to be next generation drones that need to be designed. So if you want to do the mechanical side of things, there's also going to be, I envision a future with a lot of operation centers. So people that need to monitor these drones and understand how they work and work closely in the field. So that might be you understanding regulatory or having some sort of pilot's license, or maybe in the future we have a UAS license that's really well known. I think there's a lot of opportunities, and it's about finding how you can fit into the drone space based on your interests.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Kruger?
So I think you hit the nail on the head there. I'm going to deep dive a little bit more though. So the university has done a lot of research into this in terms of careers up and coming. And obviously, like you said, one of the biggest things we're working is regulations. So right now, the FAA makes it very difficult to, like I said, fly over people, fly beyond visual line of sight, and also fly aircraft over 55 pounds. fly more than one aircraft. So imagine one pilot monitoring 2, 3, 4, 10, 20 aircraft at a time. Those are all the major things that we are actually actively working projects for at the university to improve those regulations, prove the safety case, and figure out how to best integrate those into the airspace. So when I say that, in the next 5, 10, 20 years, I absolutely think that in terms of careers, package delivery, food delivery, I mean, that's going to be huge across the U.S. That is going to be one of the biggest, I guess just biggest things out there for unmanned aircraft. On top of that, right now, for agriculture, like I said, that's a huge thing in North Dakota. It's one thing to do inspections of crops, but we are still using manned aircraft constantly to spray the crops. And that flying an aircraft over 55 pounds, it's very difficult to use an unmanned aircraft under 55 pounds to spray a whole field. So if we can kind of bust through that regulation and get autonomous aircraft out there, not only is a manned pilot not at risk of hitting a tree, a power line, or anything, it's keeping them safer, but these aircraft are just out there doing work, allowing other people to do more things, help their farm out. So I would say those are probably the two biggest use cases and careers that are going to be up and coming.
Before I move on to Wendy, Jordan, I'd like to get your perspective on, with all this talk of automation, what's that going to do to the pilots out there and their jobs?
So it's a tough one, right? I came into the university going for commercial aviation, right? I quickly realized that unmanned aircraft being autonomous and the technology that existed out there, careers as a manned aircraft pilot would eventually end straight up. I mean, it's safer to just have less people in aircraft, right? What goes up must come down. And on top of that, generally computers can fly the aircraft better than the pilot can. In fact, you've probably heard on the news when manned aircraft pilots go up and fly these big commercial airliners, they're in control of the aircraft to push the throttle forward, pull the airplane back, get it off the ground, and then they push the autopilot button. From there on, it is autonomous, or well, almost. They're still moving dials and stuff until landing, right? So in terms of what's going to happen to manned pilots, I don't think we'll see it in our lifetimes where a commercial airliner will be flying itself. I think in the next 10 to 20 years, it might go down to a single pilot operation. Right now for commercial airliners, it's generally 2 pilots up in the cockpit. It could easily go down to 1 pilot, and then in 50 to 100 years, and I say this because it's a generational thing, right? I'd love to ask you this question. It'd be tough for me to answer, obviously, but if you got onto an aircraft right now and had no pilots, would you actually take off and just let it fly? It's a tough one, and it's a generational thing. So that's where I'm at. I think it will shift towards autonomy, and whether that's good or bad, I mean that's everybody's own perspective.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Ms. Erickson, are there some careers that you envision coming on the horizon?
Yeah, mentioning some of the ones that are here now and only going to expand, and hoping I don't repeat any of the ones that have been mentioned, but the inspection industry is huge in drones, inspecting towers and wind turbines and bridges and cell towers. So that inspection in general. The insurance industry is using drones in several ways to make their jobs more efficient. And I wanted to mention we need more Divyas in the world. Again, a passion of women in drones and STEM education for girls. We know that in the drone industry, the only measure that we really have statistics on is through the FAA when it comes to the number of people who register and take to be pilots and take the necessary exams. And right now, we know that since the FAA started the mandate for commercial drone pilots to have taken an exam and be certified, we know that only 6% of all the certified drone pilots in the United States, almost 7% now, are women. And that mirrors what the aviation industry has always known, that that's the same basic percentage, about 7% of all manned aircraft pilots are women. So that's my plug for you teachers out there, to inspire the girls in your class to get hooked on aviation, and maybe a drone will do it. Who knows?
And a good way to do that, and thank you, Wendy, I appreciate that. One career that we haven't mentioned is movie industry, and how their adoption of the technology is continuous, and it continues to grow. So a good application for educators to teach kids on drones is shooting angles for film. It's pretty easy. A lot of these kids are YouTubers or want to be YouTubers, and they know the video game probably better than we do. That's a great application to take your drone and practice shooting movie shots. I think there are numerous YouTube channels where you can figure that out. Reach out to me or some of the other panelists. We can find you some folks who are in that industry. But I think that's one of those things that's not going to go away. The drone, and it won't ever be automated either. So there's that.
Good point.
Now's a great time for the audience. If you have some questions, I think we have a few more minutes. Raise your hand, and you can either ask your question in the chat or unmute your mic and ask it yourself. Adrian Garcia, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm a teacher for Dallas ISD. I teach at the Career Institutes. We teach aviation and drones. So I just want to know, like, who can I connect with? I'm pretty sure I can connect with you, Ernest, but as far as like industry partners, we already have a couple industry partners. We have the Commemorative Air Force. We have the City of Dallas with their aviation department. We have Frontiers of Flight Museum. But I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I can connect with you, Ernest, but like who can I talk to as far as like industry partners who are willing to, just support us and whatnot?
Yeah, holler at me or Mr. Kenneth Berry, but yeah, probably I'm the guy for that. And then I can direct you to some of the other folks around that can give you some help.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Any other questions from the audience? Mr. James, you go ahead.
Hi, I'm actually a non-conventional student, and I'm currently in community college for UAS. Actually, Ernest, you'll be speaking with our class on Tuesday with Darren.
Hey, good.
I'm, and I know this question will help out a lot of the educators out there to give their students an idea where to go. I'm graduating with my UAS and with my AAS and UAS in May. But before that, I had no background whatsoever in anything aviation. I was at a loss. I didn't know what to do with myself. I knew I needed a degree because I never had one. And I just chose this because I thought it would be a fun career to get into. And I'm kind of at a loss on where to take it after my AAS. And I'm thinking that most likely Jordan would be able to answer that question better since, what prestige he's at 24 years old.
I appreciate that. So that was honestly one of my biggest questions too. Going through the University of North Dakota, I had internships with General Atomics, which is a large UAS manufacturer. I worked for several small companies in Grand Forks like Skyscopes, Flytrex, Airtonomy. And that just kind of gave me just a very basic, small kind of career background. But, I still wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. We had the Collegiate Drone Racing Championship up here. I was able to lead that back in 2019. And because of that, actually, Mark Askelson, my boss at the Research Institute, RISE, was actually leading that competition. And that's the reason I got kind of the job. I knew somebody. But for anybody else coming out of UAS, whether it's applied, associates or bachelors or, whatever you got, there are so many careers out there. I would say, it's kind of based on what you like, right? For small UAS, if you want to just fly aircraft, there are hundreds and hundreds of small UAS companies out there where you can just go be a pilot, go to real estate, go do pipe inspections, go do bridge inspections, anything you want. If you wanted to get more on, kind of the engineering side or the management side, there's hundreds, and I mean, everything's out there, right? So I guess it's really based on what your preferences are. What have you liked the most about your experiences, and how do you take that forward? So totally willing to get back in contact with you after this and talk more through that too.
Thanks, Jordan. I appreciate that.
And help with your job search. Women in Drones has a job board where they have job openings posted, and they allow employers to go on and post job openings. So that's a good resource for you if you're looking for a job, you're in the market as soon as you graduate, or shoot, you say you graduate in May, to start talking with some of these companies to get on their radar. Kiera Elledge.
Close enough. I just have a quick question about maybe internships or something like that for our high school kids that are in a STEM program or on a STEM path, that, whenever they get into 11th and 12th grade, to have maybe a capstone opportunity internship with industry. Where would we start that conversation, or where would we want to look to be able to get that?
Where are you located?
Fort Worth.
So Fort Worth, via the task force, we're creating an internship program for folks to use, but there are some resources like companies like Bell and other drone manufacturers.
We work with Bell. They actually are in our school district. I'm in HEB.
Yep.
So they're in my backyard.
Yep, absolutely. Those are the folks who have the internship programs now, but we're currently working to get other drone companies, getting them some programming. So stay tuned for that. But follow up with me after today, and then we'll see if we can find some that are available to you today that aren't Bell related.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Next question. I think we had the time for one or two more questions from the audience.
Ernest, looks like someone posted something in the chat for Wendy.
Okay. There you go. Wendy, with the increasing demand of journalists to do more with less money, resources, etc., how do you think the implementation of drones will keep future journalists interested in pursuing that very necessary career path? And this is Quindell Williams from Syracuse, and I think he flies drones for some of the news folks up there. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, yes, it's a tough thing. It depends upon the market size that you're in. Here in St. Louis, where I live, we're about the 21st market, where it's not to the point yet where they have a dedicated drone pilot. They've basically taken photographers and trained them, had them certify as remote pilots. And so it's been tough. I think I hope with the regulations evolving and the broadcast companies embracing the technology a little more and being less afraid of the liability and feeling a little more secure, that there will be more use of the drones in the newsrooms. As I said, that's been a little difficult area to maneuver through for the broadcast television industry. I don't know if I answered the question, but I think, did I answer the question? Address the question correctly?
Mr. Williams, were you satisfied with her answer? Yes, he said yes, thank you. One last question. Go ahead, raise your hand, let me know. If not, I will end our session and let you guys get to your next, was session 2 for the breakouts. I appreciate our panelists today, Wendy, Jordan, and Divya. Appreciate you guys today. You guys did a magnificent job. And folks, I think our contact information was sent out to everyone, so please feel free to reach out to either one of us with any questions. Panelists, you guys have any closing remarks?
I've got one super quick plug. Well, first of all, thank you, Ernest, and thank you to all the attendees checking stuff out. Happy to be here. But one quick plug, the CDRA Collegiate Journalism Association is very happy to be part of the Multi-GP STEM Alliance. If any of you educators are looking for a STEM program, we've got it built out over the last several months. We're working with Drones in Classrooms, a company that already has curriculum. I'm bringing my knowledge to improve that. And Multi-GP, an international racing organization, we're doing some pretty awesome stuff. So feel free to reach out to me for that.
Thank you, Jordan. Wendy?
I'm sorry. Any
Yes. Final comments?
Yeah, no, I was just going to, womenandrones.com. Please visit our website. We have stories there of women in the industry, and we have resources, and we are hoping to do more of these types of events and be involved and spread the word for everyone in the industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Divya?
Thanks so much for having me, Ernest. Yeah, please feel free to check out Zipline. If you search up Zipline International, you'll see it. We actually do hire some talented high school interns. So if you feel like there's people in your classes that might be a good fit, like please send them over to the website. And yeah, I think we'd also be happy to like do virtual tours and things like that for students. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much for that, Divya, and I appreciate everyone. Y'all have a great rest of your Saturday. Please make sure you stay tuned and get in with those other 2 sessions for the rest of the day. Have a good day.
Ernest, you can end the recording and make sure you save it, please.
Thank you.
I had a quick question. What session is